Welcome back, y'all. I want to talk about Sifu, which I've been chipping away at on PlayStation 5, but is also available on PS4 and PC. The question is Sifu worth your chunk of change? Now, I'm not considering this a full, comprehensive review. It's more my impression so far, my gut reaction to the game at just past the halfway mark in my playthrough. But let's just get into it. Oh, and if you don't mind, maybe like, maybe subscribe? You do you. Now, alright, this game comes from Slow Clap, the French developer behind 2017's Absolver. Now, I didn't try Absolver until 2020, I believe, when it came to Xbox Game Pass. I put an hour in, if that, and moved on. In 2021, I gave it another try, though it had left Game Pass, and I think I ended up buying it on sale on Steam. Sorry, Xbox. Put a couple more hours in, and while I did enjoy the combat, I just knew I wasn't going to stick around and put in the time needed to be competitive at the in-game's PvP. A couple of early matches in the multiplayer where I got stomped like an empty beer can show me that much was gospel fact. So I moved on. It was interesting, but for whatever reason, it just didn't grab me. I think the mechanic of building your fighter's repertoire over time, coupled with the multiplayer aspect, just seemed too daunting of a commitment. I had and still have one heck of a backlog, y'all. Sifu, however, is a single player experience, and from the first trailer I saw, I've been eagerly awaiting this game's release. It looked to be a unique challenge and one that didn't ask for as much of my time. So now that I've finally got my hands on Sifu, turns out I know Kung Fu. Well, I'm learning. It all boils down to L1 plus left analog, and then triangle, triangle, square, triangle, but mainly L1 plus left analog, which is avoid. You see, in Sifu, the art of kicking ass isn't in the kicking, it's in the not getting kicked yourself. Because every hit in Sifu gives your character one serious boo-boo. Your health bar is like an egg on a spoon, and you, my friend, have to balance it while running barefoot over broken glass. It's all about the avoid. Avoid, avoid, parry, unleash your strike. Block only when you must, better to avoid. Dodge only when you must, better to avoid. See, in Sifu, dodging is basically scrambling desperately out of the way, and you will most likely be nowhere near close enough to attack back. Whereas avoiding is the confident play, moving just enough to not get hit but staying within striking distance. Sifu is a game of precision and repetition. There are only 5 levels with a boss at the end of each, and I imagine you can breeze through them fairly quickly, if, and this is a big if, you actually can breeze through them, because you probably can't at first. Sifu is tough, and while yes, it reminds me of games like Sekiro or the boss rush game Fury, it also has elements that bring to mind more roguelite, rogue-adjacent titles. In Sifu, death has consequences beyond just a loading screen. Now, one death isn't game over, technically, but what makes Sifu so challenging, what causes it to require precision and repetition, is that unlike a lot of other tough games, in Sifu you can't snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Well, you can, but you'll be severely hamstrung for the next level. Beating a boss with no lives of your own left is a Pyrrhic victory. The age you end level 1 is the age you begin level 2, and that carries over to each stage as you progress. So if you barely make it out of a stage with 1 life left, you will have to do the rest of the game with that 1 little life. The death mechanic in this game is really unique. Each time you die, you rise again with aging as the cost. You start at 20, die once, and you rise at 21. But on your second death, you jump to 23, and on your third, you're age 26. Then 30, 35, 41. The cost of each death goes up. Now, as you age, your damage does go up as well, but your ability to take a punch goes down. In the beginning, it's very easy to end up as a 70-year-old whose punch packs a wallop, but who is frail enough in turn that you can get KO'd by a well-timed fart. Game over, thanks for playing. Now it's back to the start of this mad martial arts merry-go-round. Off you go to try and most likely die again. When I first got out of level 1, I was 71 years old. Starting level 2 at that age meant I really didn't make it very far. So I went back to level 1. I came out of there at 49, then 26, then 23, then 20. See where the repetition comes in? It took several tries, but I more or less perfected level 1, meaning I made it through with 0 deaths. So I could start level 2 in the best possible shape. Level 2, I again got out around 70 years old the first time, so much for perfection, and it made exploring level 3 all but impossible. I went back to level 2, got out at 53, 48, then 35. At 35, I managed to claw my way through level 3 to face the third boss with enough lives left that I could comfortably experiment in the fight. Now, I found the lead up to level 2's boss more challenging than the lead up to level 3's, but I know that I'll have to go back and decrease the age I leave level 2 if I want to have any shot at level 4 or 5. And I'm only going to show you the first 3 levels because I don't want to spoil it all for you in this video, and also maybe a little bit because I haven't gotten past the third boss yet. But to be fair, I have a day job, and I did say this was more impression than full review, so let's manage expectations here, y'all. But in what I've played so far, I've learned the need for precision. Every mistake will punish you terribly. Every death makes it that much more likely that you won't make it to the end of the game, much less that level. So what do? Well, you go back and get good. I apologize for saying that. But when you do get good, and heck, even before you do, the combat in this game is glorious. It's smooth, responsive, fluid. Whether you are squaring off with a sub boss or on crowd control duty in a room full of chump goons, you will feel like Jackie Chan. This is Raid Redemption, the game. This is the hallway in Oldboy, the game. I mean that almost literally because look at this. Sifu as a game lives and dies, pun intended, on its combat, and it is exceptional. I like learning it, improving, trying to master it. When you successfully wipe out a room with nary a snub toe of your own, it feels real good. Beyond the combat, it's almost all mostly positive. The art direction is fantastic. While low poly, painterly is the word that comes to mind, and it's a clear positive evolution from Slowclap's previous game Absolver, which itself was visually very satisfying. I will say, sometimes the camera ends up in the worst possible spot, and the need to reposition it in the middle of a fight can lead to you taking some hits that feel cheap. As for sound, I think the hits, kicks, and takedowns all have the right weight. The music does work well. My only complaint is that for me, it was never really the highlight that the best game soundtracks managed to be. And while the story is scarce, the voice acting, especially in cutscenes, feels to be a last minute add on, as if somebody at Slow Clap was like, "What do you mean we didn't record any of the lines? We ship in a week. Doesn't your cousin do community theater? Can we get him in here to record?" But like I said, dialogue and story overall is minimal, and so it didn't bother me that much. The progression system by which you unlock moves is solid, once you understand it. And I don't think Sifu does do a good job of explaining it. I mean, you unlock moves each run by spending XP. But you can permanently unlock moves by spending more XP. How much more? 5 times. 5x. What does 5 times mean? Does it mean to buy this move 5 times on 5 runs? That was my first impression, and admittedly, I am an idiot. But it still took me a few runs, exactly 6, to make any progress on a permanent unlock, because, oh, it's actually 5 times after the initial unlock each run, where I would need to keep spending on the same move, which I would have known if the game had ever used any language more descriptive than 5x. Once you start unlocking these moves, they do become an ever expanding, fun bag of tools and tricks. But due to some enemies' abilities to withstand these moves, as well as the need to continuously unlock them, you will rely largely on the starting move set, which is no slouch. These beginner abilities are the backbone of combat, and they've remained snappy and engaging and exciting throughout my playthrough thus far. In addition to these barehanded moves, there are bats, blades, bottles, and broom handles to pick up and whoop ass. You can trip up enemies with footstools and cash-filled duffel bags. While yes, you will be learning enemy patterns, your own ability to mix and match combos with environmental opportunities and the semi-randomness of enemy spacing, especially in mobs, means the fights stay interesting and you can never quite settle into a pattern of your own. Each hit you take is serious, and health is only gained back at these totems that let you pick a level up reward for the run, or through takedowns, where you've broken through an enemy's guard, in Sifu called a structure, and get a quick instant kill and a pinch of health. The enemies are a mixed bag. The bosses so far have been demanding, but essentially boil down to just learning their patterns and not making a mistake. You just need to avoid, and slowly whittle down their health. That's been the mechanic for the first 3 at least. The lesser enemies show more variety, and making your way to the boss is the highlight here. You have the standard cannon fodder who seem to have a couple levels of competence. Then you have like sub bosses and more obvious mini bosses. And there are these larger guys who can prove tricky. But one thing that stands out, a really interesting mechanic, is that attempting a takedown doesn't always work. A regular enemy can fight off the finisher and basically level up and turn into a fierce fighter. Suddenly, a foe that might have only taken a single combo before is now going to be a very dangerous encounter. And every time it occurred, it never failed to ratchet up the intensity of a fight, forcing me to reassess both my position and my priorities. Now, I do want to mention there have been a couple of bugs. One was very minor. A random bad guy got stuck in a wall, no big deal. I pummeled him further into the drywall and carried on with my day. The other bug was more frustrating. In the zone just before Stage 2's boss, I had an enemy disappear after I came back from a death. This meant the door forward was locked as I hadn't technically cleared the room. After several minutes of trying to cheese my way forward, I had to restart the level, losing my progress. It only happened once out of dozens of run-throughs, but I think it's worth mentioning in a game where progress is so hard won. When it happened, I was already too old for the clear to be worthwhile, but if I'd been in a good position age-wise, I would have been much more irritated with the bug. Having said that, I don't see myself getting tired of this game or regretting my purchase. I'm having a blast with Sifu. I can't wait to dive back in and finish it. I'd recommend this game to anyone who likes roguelikes or Souls-like games, or if you were a fan of Absolver. For anyone else, this game truly is awesome, but just be aware that the challenge itself is the experience. You are supposed to try again and again and again. So that's my opinion, but I'd love to hear yours. Let me know in the comments. Are you going to check out Sifu? Have you already played it, or are you just not interested? Anyway, like the video if you liked it, and maybe subscribe if you want to hear me ramble some more. And as always, good games, y'all.